Hello, good morning, good afternoon
Good
to Europe.
morning.
So we're going to give a little introduction. I'm Larissa, pronouns she, they, whatever you want to call me, I don't mind. And I'm one half of Poetry Trapper Keeper, and we're here with Kelly as well, who's the other half of Poetry Trapper Keeper. Please introduce yourself.
Kelly, she, they, yep, the other half of Poetry Trapper Keeper. And there's a bee who wants to join us soon. Maybe the bee will have some questions in a minute. And yeah, we're excited to have Eliot on today. This is our very first Poetry Trapper Keeper interview. Eliot, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Elliot, he, him. Whenever I introduce myself, I always want to be like, I'm Elliot, I'm an alcoholic. I'm like, this is not the right meeting. But yeah, I'm Elliot. I'm happy to be here.
It's the AA seeping in through every other.
It's just when I make an introduction, that feels like part of it, but it's not right now, you know?
Yeah, that was always my go-to joke because of group therapy as well. I'd always be like, "Hi, I'm Larissa. I'm here because I try to kill myself." I'm leaving that out. I'm canceling that. But anyway, so yeah, we're here. We're gonna ask you a few questions. Congratulations on your book launch. Is it officially launched or does it launch next week?
It comes out in the UK on the 8th, but it's already in bookstores. And I've seen from several people that like their pre-orders from the UK have already come. But it's like officially launched on the 8th. Yeah, in 2 days.
That's
Wow,
exciting.
interesting. Yeah, really exciting. Really,
So
really
And
exciting.
how do you
get my box of books? I haven't got them yet. Apparently, there's like a delay at the warehouse, so I'm still waiting for my own copies. But yeah.
And how does it feel having it launched now in 2 days?
It feels okay. I mean, it feels really exciting, and it honestly, I feel free because it's not like a document on my computer anymore. It's not something I have to edit. Like it's done, and like it's not mine anymore. You know what I mean? And that feels really settled and good and satisfying. But yeah, I am nervous, and it is like feels very vulnerable, but you know, it's just a book in the end, so it's okay.
Just a couple pieces of paper.
Yeah.
So maybe it's good to start because also maybe people are joining who don't know who you are or haven't read the takeover from PTK yet. So maybe it's even good to just do an introduction, like what is the name of your book? What's it about? And then we can kind of dig into more questions about the process behind it.
Yeah, sure. So my book is called Ponyboy. It's my first novel, and it's a coming of age story told in 3 acts. And we follow this narrator who's like a pill popping, speed snorting, trans-masculine lightning bolt. We follow him through destructive relationships from city to city, from drug to drug, from party to party. And we see him, you know, kind of chaotically stumble through his life. And yeah, that's the protagonist. That's who we're following. It's mixed with like poems and letters, and just traditional prose as well. And yeah.
Nice. And I was wondering, because I think you might have mentioned this either in some of our discussions on PGK or also offline, but how long have you been working on this book and what was a process like that? Like, how different is it from what it is now to like where it started and how did it start in your head?
Well, I started writing it when I was still in my undergrad, which is where I met Larissa in Paris. So I started writing it in like 2013. But I didn't know I was writing a novel. I just had
Yes.
letters and these fragments and these poems, and I just kept going with it. And I wasn't really certain the form it would take or what it was, but it just felt really dire and necessary that I keep going. And so just over the years, I did workshops and met other writers. And slowly but surely, I started to build sort of a document that was like, okay, I think this is a book. And so really and then I did my master's in 2019. And that's when I really sort of had the time to be like, this is a book now. I'm going to edit my book. And so that sort of like institutional support gave me the space to take it more seriously. I was taking it I was taking it seriously before, but the master's program sort of gave me the time and bandwidth to be like, this is what I'm doing for 2 years.
Yes. Was there like a certain epiphany that you had when you were like, okay, all these letters and all these elements that I've been writing, I'm actually kind of subconsciously writing a book? Or was it more of like a natural kind of through line in this process where slowly it just naturally became, okay, now I'm writing a novel?
Yeah, I don't think I ever thought I'm writing a novel. I felt more like uh these are like the things I have. Like this is what I got.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? It just kind of felt like I'm doing these workshops, I'm meeting writers, I'm reading, and this is like my response to life, or like this is my material, you know?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Um, and I think, I mean, Larissa knows more than I do. And maybe it's also good to do a little like brief origin story of Larissa and Eliot to also be transparent that you're friends. So maybe we can start with both of your origin story. And then I'm also interested in getting into like the autobiographical nature of the book and the decisions behind that. But first, yeah, how do you two know each other?
Well, Kelly, now we're all friends, so you're also Elliot's friend.
Yes, honored.
But I mean, I can tell my POV and then Elliot can tell theirs, I guess. But I met, I was friends with my best friend and I were living together, and then we weren't living together anymore because we had a bit of a problem there, but it was great. We're still friends. And they called me up one day and they were like, oh, I met someone at a party and they're amazing. And I was like, oh, okay, great. I want to meet them. And then that was it. One day she was like, let's go hang out with him. And we went to hang out with him and we ended up hanging out all night. And I think I cried a lot. And then I remember Elliot telling me that you're so brilliant and smart. And I was like, as a Leo, I love you. Thank you. You're going to be my friend forever
A new
now.
best friend.
I need compliments. But yeah, I feel like when I met Elliot, I was so moved by like his passion and his ability to transit between like being a very much an intellectual and like a very smart person, but at the same time not thinking of himself as better than anyone else, which I was having a little bit of a hard time with myself as I was struggling with a bit of intellectual arrogance or a feeling of superiority, I guess. And Elliot really helped me connect the dots between like um, rationalizing emotion and emotionalizing rationality, I guess, like making it all one thing and realizing that I didn't have to close myself off emotionally in order to be seen as smart. And I also didn't have to prove to anyone that I was smart to overcome my
Mm,
emotional drawbacks, I guess. That's my point of
mm.
view. And then I guess,
Oh, that is so sweet.
I know, it's pretty profound.
Oh, I need to like write that down later, what you just said about.
well, there will be recorded for posterity
Yeah, I
forever.
love that. I love that. Yeah, like Larissa said, I met them in Paris and we were partying one night, and my girlfriend at the time was like, you have to meet my best friend. So we met, and yeah, we had lots of sort of debaucherous evenings. But I think the through line that I got from my friendship with Larissa is just this, like, I was like writing the stuff, but I didn't really know any artists. And
Mm,
so like through my friendship with Larissa and through my girlfriend at the time, I felt like, oh, these are really interesting people who also have their own material that they're gathering and creating. And so for me, it was a very generative friendship. And yeah, it continues to be a generative friendship and an important one to me.
Yeah. I think it's so funny that you say like, oh, these are really interesting people. When I look back at the time, I just see myself as like deeply mentally ill and very drunk. But I guess we were very fashionable and fun, and
Well,
we
you were
did
still
listen to,
you. You were still you
yeah.
know, like you still were who you are, even if you were mentally ill and drunk, you know.
I think my favorite memory is every night when like the night would be coming to a close early in the morning around 6 or 7, we would listen to Fastcar and sing it
oh
at
my
the top of
God.
our lungs and cry and cry.
Was this not a phase everyone went through in college? Because I feel like I had a similar phase with
Okay, good. We
Fastcar.
weren't alone in that. That's good.
And Elliot and I would walk arm in arm around the streets of Paris, screaming all the young dudes as well, and just like cry. There was a lot of crying, like from deep, heartfelt emotion. I
Yeah.
think that's what I remember. I remember feelings.
Oh my God. Yeah, I feel like I can picture it so vividly, not having known either of you at that time in your life, but like after knowing Larissa for so long, and then also after reading the book, I'm like, this is already like an indie movie I want to watch. Um, but with that being said, yeah, I was curious as well, like as a writer myself, and I think Larissa, you and I, our work with Poetry Trapper Keeper is also very much autobiographical in a way where sometimes we don't even care, and that's very much the nature of it. Um, but I think of this a lot too, like if I were to ever write a book or do something more long form that's more autobiographical, how would I decide what to fictionalize, what not to fictionalize? How would I involve the people who characters are based off of? Would I or wouldn't I? And Elliot, I'm interested just in like, yeah, your whole thought process behind that, and if it evolved throughout the process, or if your expectations were maybe different from then, what ended up happening with like how you fictionalize things or not.
Yeah, I mean, the book is fiction. And I mean, I feel like Ponyboy is character. Ponyboy isn't me,
Right.
like a Ponyboy and I have like intersections of experience. And, I was writing this not thinking about anyone reading it. I think I
Yeah.
was sort of narrow-minded in that. And I think that's important for me as a writer to not write thinking about it ever being published. Because I had like a writing mentor early on. And I think it's like an Annie Dillard quote too, which is like, leave it all on the page. Like,
Yeah.
don't turn away. And so for me, like writing the book was just a practice in that of like, well, if I'm gonna be here writing, I'm gonna fucking do it, like, and so
Yes.
like a lot of Ponyboy's experiences are intersected with my own because that's where I write from. That's my vantage point. And I don't like,
Mm-hmm.
and with like characters and stuff, obviously names um and like characteristics were all changed so that there's no recognizable character in the book. That was important for me to do as well, because to give
Yeah.
myself some distance. And like
Yes.
I sort of resist like this autobiographical category, because like to me it feels like um I mean, just because like I'm trans and the protagonist is trans and there are like
Yes.
similarities doesn't mean that it's about me necessarily.
Right.
But I
Yep.
do understand why people think it's autobiographical, and I'm not like upset about that. Like it makes sense. And I'm like, yeah, that's true, like fair. But I also am
Mm-hmm.
like, it's also just like a story, like I just,
Right.
and like, yes, like the stories that I tell come from my specific lived experience, but like in the end, it's just a story.
Yes. Yes. No, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for
Do you
clarifying that
think it's,
as well.
oh, sorry. Do
No,
you
go
think it's
ahead.
even possible to tell a story that doesn't come from
Mm.
like a lived experience in some way? Like I admire like fiction authors so much, like people who write
Yes.
fantasy, like people who write sci-fi, because I'm just like, maybe I'm too self-involved, but I can only see the world like from the things I've seen and like the feelings I've had. And like I have a very hard time just imagining things. Maybe I'm just not a writer, but like, how do you feel about that? Do you think every work is somewhat autobiographical in that sense?
I mean, I don't know. I think like it just depends how you write. Like I don't sit down and think about plot or like story structure. And I think like there's a lot of merit in doing that, but that's just like not how I want to make things. To me, it feels more like physiological and intuitive. But I think it like, it's not like a prerequisite. Like you don't have to be like into plot to be a writer. Like, and I think that kind of stops a lot of people from writing, is because they have this idea of a writer,
Mm.
you know, writing X amount of pages a day, churning it out, being prolific, having all these like complex structures. And like, that's just not how it is for me. And that's not how it is for a lot of people. And like, that's totally valid and okay. It's like, you don't have to like fit into a mold of what you think a writer is. Like, you're a writer because you say you are, and because writing is what you do.
Yes, that's very validating to hear because I feel like that's why I hesitate in writing prose or fiction or anything like other than poetry, because I'm like, I don't have a plot. I don't have an idea of what the story would be yet. And this is why I like poetry, because it just kind of comes out and flows, and I can
Mhm.
stop and go and stop and go, and it doesn't feel as intimidating as okay, okay, I need to like sit down and create this thing and know exactly where it's gonna go, you know?
I
Um,
think there's so much value in what you just said, Elliot. And it's something Elliot said to me maybe like 3 months ago, because I was telling him like, I have this book inside of me, but I don't know how to do it. And I don't know how to
Yeah.
write. And then he said, like, you just have to do it. And like, you can send me like whatever snippets you have. And I was like, oh, but I'm not a writer, you know, like I write poetry, I'm an artist. And he was like, you just have to do it. Like if you feel moved to, and it's been liberating. I think that's the word. It's like, it's very liberating to think of writing as something that fits into your life and not having to force yourself to fit into a writer's life, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah, it's definitely made it a lot less like suffering for me. I think like self-flagellation of being like, I've only written 200 words in this week and I'm never gonna get this book done. And I think
Yes.
like now it's more like I have a fun date with myself where I get to play around with words on the page, and that's thanks to Elliot and everything that he told me. So
Yes. Did
And I,
that kind of,
go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead. No, go.
Well, I just like this idea of it not having to be torturous. Like we don't have to like
Yes.
fit into, like stereotypical modes of what creating is. Like I do writing because I like it. Like, and I feel like I need to do it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and like that's why I do.
Yes.
Like it's not for like any like intellectual flex or like I did this many pages or this many words.
Yes.
It's like that's not what it is. Like that's not
No.
the vibe, you know, like it's not that deep. Like we just do it because it's fun and I like to do it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Yes.
as an enjoyable exercise, I think it's almost revolutionary to think of art as something that can be fun and enjoyable, because I think art has fought so long to be seen as labor. And
Mm-hmm.
in order for art to be seen as labor, it has to suck just like every other job. Like it has to be torturous to do
Yes.
it. And you have to feel like it's work. And I feel this with writing, but I also feel this with painting, where I denied myself the pleasure of painting for such a long time because I felt like it was too much fun for it to be considered work. Like it didn't have any value because I enjoyed doing it too much.
Mm.
Like, how am
Mm-hmm.
I going to sell this if it was just fun to do? Like, fun isn't labor, fun isn't work, because work is something that you're supposed to feel like I have to do this and commit this amount of hours. Like, it can't just be
Yes.
enjoyable. And I think reframing art and writing, anything that is like a true creative expression, as something that is allowed to be fun and that is also valid, like as work. And we don't have to pick and choose. We don't have to be miserable in order to be considering ourselves like laborious or studious or intellectual. Like it can be just a little bit easier. And I think that shows on the
Like we're all
page.
gonna die someday. Like we might as well enjoy
Yeah.
what we're doing. You know, like
Exactly.
we're all gonna die, so we might as well just like
Yes.
have fun or like
Why are
find,
we gonna kill ourselves?
you know. Because I don't know, and I also like I love this thing that my writing mentor Tom Drury told me is like the plot doesn't precede the writing, the plot can come from the writing, and that made me
Mm-hmm.
feel free, you know. And also reading like
Mm-hmm.
Eileen Myles and Henry Miller made me feel free because it was like, I can do anything I want here. Like there are no rules.
Yes.
Of
Yes.
course, there are like, you know, subconscious structural things that are happening in my brain, but like, you know, it's just like it is whatever you want it to be. And that's like the medium that worked for me, but like I don't know what it's like for other mediums, but as far as writing, it's just like, you know, go off, you know.
Well,
Right. And it's like
speaking of,
there's different way to do it for everyone. No, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, speaking of there are no rules, what genre does your book categorize itself as, or rather, what genre is your book marketed as? Is it literary fiction? Because it does include nonlinear narration, and you include a lot of poetry and letters. So I'm curious to know what genre it has been categorized into, because I don't think you wrote this book thinking I'm writing a genre book in this specific marketing analysis genre. But also, how was the decision to include poetry, to include your epistolary letters? How did all those things come about? And how do those support the plot that does happen? It's not a plotless book.
Yeah. I think well, I've seen it listed as like my favorite is like erotic transgender literature, like erotic.
Ooh.
I'm like, I love it. I was like LGBT fiction, and then like I saw it, a picture of it sold at Waterstones, which is a big bookstore in the UK
Mm-hmm.
in Brighton, as like alt fiction. So I was like, that's cute. Like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in general it's just fiction, and then it's like different branches of that. I like to think that it's like experimental fiction, right? Like that's my fantasy. But I also have gotten the feedback pretty consistently that it's like kind of commercial. So I don't know really. And like I don't know, it's not really up to me. Like it's just gonna be whatever it is. But like I like to think that it's pretty experimental. But um yeah, I think the poems and the letters just had to be in there because I needed to hang out with Brandon Tina and Freud's Door and Preciado. Like I just needed to do that. And in a way I did, you know, and like having like my letter to Brandon Tina makes him like a present figure in my life because he is, you know, like he's dead, but like he also is like my friend, and like his story and like hanging out with him was like a very formative part of my own experience coming out as trans. And you know, I just don't like this idea of like historical figures that you like resonate with are just like gone. Like I don't know, maybe it's like pop psychology or like pseudo spiritual, but like I don't believe that they're gone. I feel like Brandon Tina actually is my friend and we've like hung out, and like writing these letters was a way for me to just be like, I don't need you canonized in a way that represents your life for you to be in my life. Like I don't need your history to be told in a way that actually represents you. What I need is to have like a conversation with you. And so like, these letters were just ways for me to like have conversations with these historical figures that were really important to me. So it just felt like, and with Kathy Acker too, it was like, you know, I don't know, in the letters, like, I want to fuck Kathy Acker, you know? So it's like, that's what we're going to do. I'm going to have this interview where I imagine having sex with Kathy Acker and we're talking about the body and what sex is, because to me, she's like the pinnacle of like somatic writing, you know? So instead of being like, let me like type my musings about it, I was like, no, I'm just going to fucking talk to Kathy Acker because I can do
Yes.
whatever I want in writing. Do you know what I mean? And like, it's kind of silly.
Yes.
It's kind of silly, but like, it's just like what I had to do. And so I felt like important to include those because it was like, you know, this is what my material is, like this is what I'm doing. And like I've heard like Eileen Miles said that like writing, like having a writing life is like continually giving yourself writing exercises, and I think this was an example of like a writing exercise I gave
So
myself,
true.
you know.
So true. I want to try it now. How does it feel now, also kind of being on the other side of the letter, now that you have this book out there, and also kind of relating, I guess, to the experience of taking over PTK? And Larissa and I have been responding to you and your work. And I imagine now that the book is out, other people may start to do this same exercise with themselves, or they have a dialogue with you. Have you thought about that, or do you have feelings about that? Or how was the process also when taking over PTK and having other people respond to your work?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. That's a really good one. I haven't like thought about it as like a dialogue before, and I think that's a really interesting way to frame it. And like what a fucking exciting thing to think about it as a dialogue, that like
Yeah,
work is
right?
existing in a way that will create more interlocutors, because I think the book was written from a place
Yes.
of deep loneliness and like a
Mm-hmm.
total sort of solitude, whether that was real or perceived. I mean, I had lovely people around me, but was deeply lonely, you know.
Yeah.
So like that's I'm glad you pointed that out, because that's really beautiful to think about it as like, you know, proliferating interlocutors and having this conversation now.
Yes.
Yeah, how would you feel if in 100 years time someone wrote a book and there was a letter to Eliot Duncan in it about how he was so important in my coming to terms with my transness?
Yeah, I would love that. That's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah. Yeah.
It's out there. It's out there. People now can live with it and talk to it and read
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how do you think that that interlocutor relationship transferred over, like with you publishing on PTK, on Poetry Trapper Keeper? How do you feel about this process that you've been doing, like taking over for a month? Also, I'm not sure, like, how do you feel about having had entire complete freedom over what you wanted to put out there, as opposed to like this book, which you've been working on for over 7 years and I'm sure has gone through a million edits and a lots of other input and other voices? And how did it feel for you to be able to write whatever you wanted without any sort of constraints? And how did it also feel to have your words be responded to so directly? I think you really struck a chord with Kelly and I, and we talked privately about this. We were having like moments about like gender questioning, and I was like, I can't even respond to this. Like, this is too private, this is too personal, this is too beautiful, and how am I going to do this any justice? So we want to know your side of this whole experience. Like, how has it been for you?
Well, I mean, I don't want to sound like like melodramatic, but it's genuinely been a privilege to be able to like have this space in like a poetry setting, which I like was very flattered by that I was asked, because like it feels really good to be like, you know, do your thing, like being given the permission and the space to just be like, do whatever you want to do. Like that is very special, and I don't take that for granted. And yeah, it's been really cool to just be like, it feels like an offering, you know, like these are the things I have. And then for those to be well received and for them like to have conversations about it has been really cool. And it's also just nice to be like involved with people who are also creating. And like you both have obviously made such a special, I know special is kind of a dorky word, but like it feels like the right word, like a special space with PTK. And I just felt, you know, just like excited about being involved.
We're back.
Back on air.
So I think before we had our little break, we were talking about your thoughts on being a part of PTK and on being a poet in general, right? And for Poetry Trapper Keeper, you included a lot of, oh, I'm just switching to gallery view, sorry. For Poetry Trapper Keeper, you included a lot of video work, which I hadn't seen from you before, even though I've known you for a while. And also you said that you're leaning more towards making video content and making video art. You're an artist as well as a writer. And we want to know like what that means to you. How did you come to video? How did you come to working in like a 4D medium? How do you think that translates from something like writing, which is just on the page and, you know, not very visual? And how do you feel about it? How did this happen?
I don't know. It feels a little uncomfortable because I'm like still new at it. So I'm like, oh, I don't know. But like it's fun. I like it. I like piecing together images. I watched this like Dennis Cooper film called like Cattle to Sun. I'm pretty sure that's the title. It's like Cattle to something. And I was just like, oh my God, I want to do this. You know, like those moments to me feel kind of special where like you witness something and you're like, oh wait, I feel like I like know a step forward in this direction, or something like that happened when I watched this film. And so I'm like writing a script right now. And I guess I'm just sort of into like collaging together images, and like particularly like sexually explicit ones. Like I don't know, like there's something about like being like the author of like a pornographic sensation that feels really interesting. And like I like exploring sort of darker sexual dynamics, and like visually I feel like that just works. Like writing sex I find pretty difficult, and I love doing it, but I find it very challenging. And I like this idea of like just translating like a visual moment with like words over it. And I don't really know, like I'm not sure about it, and I think that's important. Like when I'm like in the I don't know place, I feel like that is not to be like totally wanky, but like that's where God comes in, that's where spirituality comes in, is like when I don't know the answer and I don't know what I'm doing, I like to preserve that because that keeps me like free to keep going, you know. So I don't really know what the fuck I'm doing, but I like it and it's fun.
Well, you don't know what you're doing, but do you have an inkling of what you would call it? Would you call it visual poetry? Would you call it film? Would you call it video art?
It's
Do you
actually
have
what you're really good at, Larissa. You're really good at like taking phenomena and like putting a face to it, specifically like artistic phenomena. So I don't know, maybe like a video essay or something. I'm not really sure.
oh,
Yeah.
video essay is interesting.
Erotic video essay.
Yeah, I like that. That's
Or yeah, we can
It's a new
totally have a
genre.
meeting and brainstorm a title for the type of work you're making now. I love the way that you selected certain pieces from the book to read over the visual images and the video images, not video images, the moving images, the video art, the video essays.
The erotic video essay images.
And I would like to ask you how those were selected, why those specific passages. Does it have something to do with you feel like those have a narrative flow, or like they evoke imagery that you can juxtapose against, or how did that come about?
well,
Or was it just intuition? That's fine too.
I think it was just intuition, and like I hadn't read the book in a second, and I was just going through it, and I was like, oh yeah, I think I like this part, and it just kind of went from there.
Were the images things you already had that you collaged together, or did you go out and create and
Both,
the content?
both. Yeah, I
Nice.
had some things, but then I wanted like Henry Rollins and like other like found footage to be in it too.
Yeah. It was so I was so pleasantly surprised when you were like, I'm gonna send you a poem, and then we got this whole amazing video thing. I was like, what?
Thank
What?
you. Yeah.
This is
Well, I'm
so
glad you
cool.
liked
I can't
it.
believe we get to share this.
Yeah. And I think
And
like
also,
there's something hot to me about like found footage of like this particular type of masculinity, like sweating Henry Rollins. I don't know. There's just something that I can't write that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's very true.
Yeah.
And do you see, so now that the book is out and you've been experimenting, like, is this a certain direction you want to take your work? Are there other things that are interesting you now? Do you want to write another book, or do you want to play with other mediums like this? Like, how do you see everything evolving from here?
Well, I would like to make more videos, and I'd like to finish my script. I also have like a collection of short stories that's basically done, and I have another book underway, and
Wow,
eventually
a
I'll
lot.
write a chapbook. But like I also know if I'm gonna like keep making videos, I've got to get obsessed with it, you know, and I'm not totally
Hmm.
obsessed with it yet. I just really like it. And so I feel like for me to like get good at something, I have to be obsessive. So I'm not like obsessed with it
Yes,
yet. So if I start to get obsessed, then I'll be like, all right, I think this is what I'm gonna do now. But like I'm not there yet. I'm still sort of
yes.
writing also, but I mean I find
So
writing,
is a script that you have for a video you want to do?
yeah, I think I'm gonna make it
Cool,
myself.
cool.
I think I'm just gonna make it with my iPhone camera.
Yes.
is it a short or would
Oh,
it
it's
be
very short. It's
scripted?
gonna well, yeah, it's gonna be maybe like 5 to 8 minutes. Um, a lot of it doesn't require many people. I think I just need 2 people, and a lot of it happens like walking down a street in Brooklyn or in a bedroom. So I feel like it's doable. I just need to get like a ring light and one of those little things. I don't know. We're gonna see. I'm gonna fuck around and find out, I
Oh,
guess.
there are wonderful
Hmm.
films filmed on an iPhone. I think Tangerine
Yes.
was on an iPhone 6.
Yeah,
That's one of
true.
the most beautiful films I've ever
Oh,
seen.
yeah, that's a great movie.
Yeah, and it's also, I think, set in Brooklyn,
Yeah,
walking around in the dark.
yeah. So we'll see. I don't know. It was nice to have the space to like publish some videos. So I'm appreciative of that.
Yeah, it was lovely. It was surprising and really wonderful. You also had video artists and other writers perform at your book launch. How was the
Mm.
decision to include that and also have it at a gallery instead of a bookstore? What was the thought process behind it? And also, congratulations. How was your book launch?
Thank you. Yeah, it went really well. We had a lot of people and we sold a lot of books. And I think it was just like it had to be that way. Like I love the idea of it being like a community event. And,
Yes.
you know, so I asked my friends who are also writers to read. And then my friend Dee Mortimer, who's crazy smart, did like a Q&A, and like their questions were so like beyond me, you know? So I felt like it was great because I was like, okay, like we're all just kind of hanging out together and we're gonna like vibe, you know? And I wanted to have the visuals by Sweat Mother because I'm obsessed with his work. And like he runs this thing called the Otherness Archive, which if you haven't checked it out, it's so sick. It's like an online resource full of like queer and trans film. It basically like they do a bunch of research and categorize it, and they have all these different categories, and it's just like an amazing resource. And he just runs all that. And I was like, you know, I don't really want. I mean, I love attention, but I didn't really want it to be about me because I like attention in my own like withdrawn Scorpio way where I'm like smoking in the corner and you notice me.
Yes.
I don't really want to be up in front of people. Like that's not my zone. That's not where I'm
You
at.
like to be mysteriously brooding and have other people be like, what a mysteriously brooding man.
Exactly. And there's
Yes.
nothing like mysterious or brooding about like reading my book in front of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like that's not really comfortable. So I was like, okay, we gotta just make it a whole thing. We gotta have other people. And I wanted to have it in a gallery because I love galleries. Like, um, and you know, Ugly Duck where we had it, like has such cool events. And I was just like, I just think this is the move. Like I could like make it more of a vibe and include more people from my community and make it just based around like a community event, because like I don't know, like it doesn't feel that powerful or exciting to me to be like, oh, we're in a fluorescently lit bookshop. I don't know. I'm not against doing that, and I will happily do that. But for the launch, I just wanted it to be a little bit more dynamic and have more people involved and just make it more of like a we're doing this thing together. And maybe that's a little
Yes.
selfish way, because I'm like, I don't want to do this on my own. Like I've learned like I can't do anything on my own. Like it all takes collaboration. So I was happy to like bring other people in.
I think that's
Yeah.
the Ugly Duck where you held it was in London, right? So this book launch
Yeah.
happened in London. And you've been living in London for how many years now? 2
2
years?
years, yeah.
So it's great. I mean, I think it's wonderful what you said about like, I didn't want to do this on my own, because I think writing sometimes, and especially publishing a book, it is so much about like individual, like I did this and I'm positioning myself as like a great accomplisher of something that I did. And of course, the author has full credit for doing it. But I think it's so beautiful that you are acknowledging that you have a community around you and that you wanted that community around you. And I think that oftentimes a lot of authors leave that to the acknowledgement pages that
Yes.
oftentimes people don't even read without saying it out loud. And I think that acknowledging it before even someone gets their hand on the book, like through your launch party, is just, it's just beautiful. It's stunning. It's about community building. It's about, it's what PTK is trying to do. We're trying to create
Yes.
authorship that is not reliant on individuality. And how do we create a community around something that is so personal, right? There is a way to make something that is personal also integral to a system that works and functions and is not just about ego or like, you know, an auteur brooding. Like we said before, like writing doesn't have to be just brooding in a corner and like being suffering, and it can be joyous. It can be about community. And you know, you're still allowed to brood in a corner, Eliot. You're allowed to smoke your cigarettes in the corner. I will tell everyone you're very mysterious.
I think it goes back to that idea of labor, like we were talking about earlier too, within writing as well, because like you were saying, Elliot, like everything is done in community and with other people. And it's like sometimes we only value the quote unquote like laborious aspect of it. Like you're the person who sat down and for hours wrote it, but who's to say also that your friend who you would call every night to talk about it didn't do just as much labor in helping you to create it, or whatever, the person who's going to show up to your event to make you feel better and not feel like you're alone and you have to be up on the podium there by yourself. Like that's all different types of labor that's equally as valuable in creating this thing. And I also think it's so beautiful that then that's shown in how you launched the book and in the event, because that's not how these things ever come about. It's not one person sitting in a room like going over this thing for years and years and years by themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also it's like I think it's like a way to try and articulate that like everyone I meet and everyone I talk to informs me and changes me as a person.
Yes.
And that like I'm not just like my ideas are my own. You know what I mean? Like I'm not like in this, they were like, this is an original thought I'm having. It's like maybe like my articulation of it is something maybe like a bit slanted or something maybe I hope interesting, but like, you know, there's no new stories, right? Like all been told. And like this just is like a story that came from like my experience in my community. And yeah, so it just felt natural to be like, let's get everyone in here.
Well, speaking of community, and you just said slanted, so that gives us the perfect segue into our next question. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the Slanted House? What was that project? Is it coming back? Does it exist? What's the deal with it? And was it about community building? How did it, just tell us everything about the Slanted House?
Yeah, so I started it with Ruhi Amin, who's an artist, and a mutual friend. Well, Ruhi introduced Larissa and I, but Ruhi and I started it in Berlin, and I think like 2018, 2017. And then we got Katia Costa involved, and basically it was just like an art collective for queer and underrepresented creators, and we'd have gallery shows and readings, and we printed journals, and the whole like premise of it was like I was like looking around and being like, wow, everyone's making really interesting shit, but like no one has a place to show it. Let's just do it ourselves, because Like, I don't want to just like wait around for something to happen when like we could just do it. And Berlin's like a very generative environment for that. And it just felt natural. So we did that for several years and we took a hiatus and we have not yet done another thing, but we have had conversations about potentially bringing it back. And it's something I'm interested in doing again. So we'll see what happens.
I mean, by all means, bring it back. I think this DIY, like not waiting for someone else to do it for you, is exactly the kind of mentality that Kelly and I had when we started Poetry Trapper Keeper. We were like,
Yeah.
we have this idea. We think it would be amazing to have this exchange, like this pen pal, poetry pen pal relationship. And we want other people to see it, obviously, because, you know, I'm a Leo. And so we just went and did it. I wonder, like, if you were to restart Slanted House, for example, like now, would you be interested in considering a Substack? Like, how do you think that Substack, like, relationship of just immediate publishing as almost like a blog or but well, the way we use it is like a literary journal in a sense, and that sense of immediacy and not waiting for someone to give an approval. Like, how would you do Slanted House nowadays that there are new, I guess, avenues for exploring public publishing?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe a Substack would be it. Like, I don't really know. I mean, I think Substack is sick. Like, I honestly didn't know about it really until PTK. And then I was like, oh my God, all these writers have Substack? This is amazing.
Yeah, right.
Like, this is so sick. So, like, I'm happy that I know about it now via YouTube. But I didn't really understand it, didn't really know what's what. But now I'm like, maybe I should get a Substack. Like, this is kind of sick. Like, I like this. So yeah, I think it's interesting, and like it's a nice way to, like you said, to like directly interact with people and not wait for like institutions to validate or like sign
Yes.
off on something, but just like directly be like, this is the thing I'm doing. And like I like the idea of like things that would be considered quote unpublishable, not because of their merit, but because of maybe they're
Yep.
like off the cuff or like
Yep.
it's happened, or like that, like you said, there's this immediacy, and that immediacy is intimate, you know. So I really like that.
Yes. Would you
Yeah.
say, like, are there certain key like differences or merits? Because now you've gone through both. You've gone through like the very institutionalized publishing world, and it sounds like you have this background in DIY publishing. Yeah, I guess like what's your take on having been in both worlds now?
Well, I still really love DIY publishing, like Sticky Fingers publishing, for example, or Butt magazine, like and like the Substacks that I now follow, you know, like that shit's so important to me as a writer. Because like once you, like, for example, like once people know about PTK and they trust the content that you're bringing out, that's like a companionship you'll have. Like that's like a trusted source of energy, you know, like it's generative. And so like those sort of DIY projects are really important to me today and feel like generative and like very integral in my writing life. Um and I guess in comparison to like, I guess, traditional publishing, it's like, I hate to admit this, but like, I'm not a huge reader. Like, I know
Yeah.
I feel embarrassed even saying that, but like, just being real, like, I'm not like a avid reader. There are times in my life where I was, but I'm very picky and I'm very, maybe that's my own personal failing. Like, maybe I should open up more, but like, I am kind of picky about what I read. So like, when I do find something that's published that I'm obsessed with, like X by Davy Davis, for example, published by Cypher Press here in the UK, I was like, this fucking it, you know, and that gave me energy for a long time. But it's not often that I find that in published books. And it's not for lack of looking or lack of trying. It's just from whatever neurotic reason, it's hard for me to find work that does that for me. But when I look at like DIY publications like PTK, for example, or Sticky Figure Publishing, I get that, right? Because I'm like, I have some kind of intuitive trust in the project and what's going on. Maybe it's like a philosophical thing, but yeah, I don't know. It feels like more accessible and generative than like sifting through published work and trying to find the thing
Yes.
like physiologically effective.
Yes. I
Well,
relate
I
to
feel like
that.
we should add a legal disclaimer that you should only trust PTK for vibes, not facts. We do not, we are not responsible. We are not publishing any truth. It's like scrolling through TikTok, take everything with a grain of salt. Only vibes, no facts. Like, do not quote us on any official documents. We don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, but that's good.
It's
And I
interesting because
think,
it's almost like bringing back, like, I don't know, the 2012, like 10 years ago when you would follow live journals, or when bloggers just started, you did have like, you could find these more like indie publishers and stuff. And then like as Instagram and everything blew up and became so homogenous, it's either like, yeah, you were reading like the #1 New York Times best-selling novel, or the people you followed on it. There's like there's no way to discover that middle ground. So it is cool that these avenues are kind of like having a resurgence in a new way, to be able to find those types of like DIY publications or people that you want to follow and find. Yeah.
Absolutely.
also, you said you're not a big reader, but you recommend only amazing books to me. Like, you're always messaging me being like, you need to read this, and just like send me, and you're like, you're gonna love it. And it's always the best book I've ever read. So please, first of all, make a Substack. Second of all, I feel like this podcast is sponsored by Substack now. But first of all, make a Substack.
Substack, please give us
Everyone's on
money.
it. My mom is making a Substack as well.
Oh, I love it.
And second of all, please publish like a week, monthly or yearly reading roundup, because I want to read everything you put your eyeballs on, because you are picky, but you select good things. You have good taste.
Thank you. I hope so. I mean, I was like, when I think about taste, also it's like I love like the Real Housewives, and like I genuinely get so much out of it. Like it is so good for me. And like I know we like categorize as like trash TV or whatever, but like
No such thing.
No, put
that
a whole
I like
thesis on
I
this.
honestly, maybe this is delusional, but I'm like, I'm reading. Like I have the fucking captions on, closed captioning on.
Yes, yes.
I am reading interpersonal psychological
Yes,
dynamics that are
yes,
about like class,
yes.
wealth, like
Yep.
the whole like marriage dynamic of like what's going on in each person's marriage and how that comes through and how they interact. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's so much there. It's like such a rich
Yes.
for
You're
me.
learning like conflict resolution skills constantly. Yep.
They're
And it's
learning about
fun.
the LGBTQ. What is
I love
that?
I love that. But Sonia Morgan really is on it, you know. She's really an ally. She loves her gay man, you know. She is a gay man. She has like that beautiful moment where she's like, I am a gay man. There are no women allowed at my gay parties. And I'm like, babe, I know, I get you. Like as a trans gay man, yes, exactly. You know?
Oh my God. I love the Real Housewives corner. When I was introducing the concept of inviting you to Kelly, I was like, he's brilliant. He published a book and he loves the Real Housewives. Like,
It's so
Yes,
good. I'm so excited
it
for the
truly
new
is.
season of New York, and I'm so excited for
I
this like
know.
Luann, and also like I
Oh
think
yeah,
there's,
Crappy Lake.
yeah, I can't wait for that because Luann
What?
and Sonia are a dream team. I love them. Also,
They
like
are.
I really want a cameo from Luann, so I think I'm just gonna buy myself one and like have her talk about Ponyboy. And I think you can like,
Oh my God, you
I think
should.
you can like
You should.
repost a cameo. Like I don't know if you have the right to it. If they send, I don't know
oh,
if
you
you can
can
post
do
it.
it.
You can, okay. So I
You
really
can do
want
it.
Luann being like,
You should.
congratulations on your book. You know, I really want that.
Yes, she would do that.
Do you remember when we were like when my whole class, we were promoting our senior exhibition, we hired a guy on Facebook that dresses up as Jesus to talk about like how they should, like it was our video invite. It was just some random guy called Jesus from Orange County or something. But yes, please, I want the endorsement, the Real Housewives endorsement. Also, there's no such thing as trash TV. I also consider it reading. I would have long conversations with my ex about how I'm like, you don't understand. Like this video that I'm watching by this YouTuber, it's the contemporary jester. Like they're allowed to make fun of everything that we're no longer allowed to make fun of. And it's like strange. And obviously, I'm not going to say what they're saying because they're obviously going through a mental breakdown, but it's like life and it's real, you know, like who needs Dostoevsky? I do. I love Dostoevsky, but you know, there's also contemporary, the Real Housewives of like
Yeah, I
engagement.
think it's like that classic sort of narrative about like high or low art, and I think reality TV is like
Yes.
cast as like low art or whatever. And I think it's way more interesting to just like what you like. And for a while, I was like,
Yes.
oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Like I'm so into it because I had this idea that like I had to be smart and I had like present myself a certain way. And like luckily I've been able to free myself from that, and now I just like what I like. And like, you know, it's deep in the way of like I get a lot from it, but it also is not that deep, and that's also important. That like I like
Yes.
things that don't have to have this like intellectual underpinning and like
Yes.
me as any sort of way, which is like actually no, babes, like I just love Real Housewives, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Embrace the
Mm-hmm.
cringe.
I would love
Embrace
to
the
work
cringe.
on that show. Like I
Oh my
was
God.
talking with a
Yes.
friend, they're like, you should get into TV writing, and I was like, the only show I would work on is Real Housewives.
Ah,
Like that's a show that has no TV writers, and I was like, exactly, like that's what I wish I want to be. You know?
yeah, I would love to see behind the scenes of how it all works. And like, I feel like one day Andy will come out with like a tell-all documentary or something where like, but they are starting to break the fourth wall a lot already in a lot of the shows. But yeah, I'm like, oh, I want to see the conversations that, like the Sonia and Ramona are having with the producers.
Yeah,
Like, how does all that work? Oh
yeah,
my God, what's
yeah,
a group chat like?
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Should we
Knit.
start to wrap it up? Because I feel like we've talked for a while. I know people love all three of us, but I don't know if they want to hear us talk for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, they're missing
I
out, but
think
we're here all week, all
I
the
know
time.
we can start a live stream. I think what Larissa had a good question for you. Well, it's kind of meta. Was is there any question throughout, you know, your press tour that people have been asking you and interviewing you that you haven't been asked that you want to answer?
Oh, thank you. That's really considerate.
Because I'm sure you've been asked a million things throughout this whole process, and maybe there's something that you've been wanting to say that no one has thought to ask before. So
Um, I don't know. I guess I don't know. Okay, so I was thinking about this, like how in the book the protagonist Ponyboy is like suffering with addiction, but then like finds solace in these like queer spaces that are all around drinking and using.
Mm,
And I think there's something there. I don't know if it's like formulated as in a question, but I do think there's something there about like being plunged into like community, and then that all being gay bars, you know, or like the gay bar being
yes.
the one space where Ponyboy's like demeanor or like identity is like a shrug or like a reason to flirt with him rather than like, you know, a contention with people around him, and how those spaces are all bars. And like, I don't know, I think it's like interesting in that like I fucking love bars. Like I'm sober now and I have been for a little bit, but like I love going to dive bars. I love gay bars. I like fucking I love it. But how like I now can enjoy that as a sober person, but like that seems to me like really sort of intense pressure and weird dynamic that's playing out in the book that no one's really brought. I guess maybe someone has brought it up, but I don't know. Sorry, I'm like, this is a long answer, but that's definitely a tension that I think is going on. And I don't have like an answer to it necessarily, just that like it's interesting that those two things are intersecting, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very relatable one. Like, yeah, why is there only this singular type of space?
Yeah. I guess this is because like not everyone's an alcoholic, you know? So like most people can operate those spaces with like boundaries and like don't like totally ruin their lives if they have a drink or take a drug, you know? I think that maybe is it. But
was
for
that
some
a
people it's
shocking
like life ending, you know?
was that a shocking realization that not
Oh my God,
everyone's an
absolutely.
alcoholic?
Absolutely. When I got sober, when I started going out, I would be like, what's going on? Like everyone's just like having a drink or maybe goes to the bar 2 times the whole night. I was like, this is weird. Like y'all are doing it wrong. And I remember my ex-boyfriend, we'd go on dinner dates and he would like order a bottle of wine. He'd have a couple of glasses and then he would just leave the bottle of wine. I'd be like, that is literal alcohol abuse. Like you need to drink that. And he's like, I don't need it. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Like that's absurd. It remains a mystery to me how people can just do that.
Alcohol abuse is leaving your wine at the restaurant, not
Yeah.
drinking at all.
Not
Yeah.
over drinking it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's how I say it's animal abuse when my dog sleeps on my chest with his butt in my face. And then my mom's like, don't call it animal abuse. People won't understand. I'm like, the animal is abusing me.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. This has been so wonderful. Thank you so much. We're going to be wrapping up your takeover, but please, please, you have the keys. You can come and go as you please. The house is
Truly.
yours.
Oh,
Make
that's
a little spot in the basement. You know, you're a little prodigal son. Come back whenever you want.
oh,
And we look forward to promoting your next book and your next script and your next film and your other book and your book of essays and your short stories and everything that comes our way. We really, really loved this experience. It was truly so wonderful. So grateful for you being here. We have to do our selection of the giveaway and the contest winners on the 9th. So, I mean,
Oh yeah,
that will be
we
in
should
a
put that
few
on our
days.
calendar.
Yeah. I mean, this has been so great. Do you have any final remarks? Anything you want to plug? Your Instagram handles, what's going to be your Substack handle now that you're going to make one?
maybe like aspiring himbo
We love that.
or something like that. Or Ponyboy
So-
5000. I don't know.
Ponyboy 5000. Follow Ponyboy 5000 and Aspiring Himbo on Substack. Follow Poetry Trapper Keeper on Substack and Instagram. And semantic_rush on Instagram. Is that it?
That's it.
And think that's it. Buy Ponyboy, please. Everybody
Yes.
buy Ponyboy. It was so good.
Amazing.
Loved it.
Well, thank
My
you for
review
being-
is
Thank you for being
5.
such a great host.
Oh, we loved it. It was so great. Thank you so much for being here. Now we're just gonna start the circle of thank you for being here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. I'm neurodivergent. I don't know when it ends. I don't know the proper social cues for it ending.
We need awkward, like everyone waves.
All right.